Good afternoon and welcome to Partner First, your source for subject matter experts, vendors of note, and thought leaders in the MSP space. I'm Ray Orsini, I'm your host, and today we're going to be joined by another amazing guest. As always, this is not death by PowerPoint. We're looking forward to your comments, your questions. This will be completely interactive. So if you have a question, pop it up. If you have a comment, pop it up. If we suck, tell us too. This is being live streamed on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn Live on both MSP Media Network and OIT VoIP properties. And also, this is going to be available immediately thereafter. So the recording is there if you have to hop off as your workday starts. To get started, I'd like to help you in welcoming my good friend, Mr. Will Young, CTO of Bering McKinley. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Ray, how's it going?
Good, man. Good. It's been too long since we've hung out. I appreciate you coming on Partner First to not only educate me but also the MSP audience.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, man. So for those that don't know you, why don't you tell us about yourself, about what Bering McKinley does?
Sure. So I'm Will Young. I'm the CTO, the tools guy over at Bering McKinley. For anybody who doesn't know, we are an operational consulting firm for MSPs or internal IT departments. And we really like to focus on the company, the business as a whole. So we've got our CEO peer teams where we're diving into your financial numbers. We've got our management consultants where we'll help you hone in on your processes and procedures. We have our tool consulting where we'll help you lock in your tools and get the most value out of them.
I'm sorry, I thought you got cut off. Sorry about that. So it sounds like you do a whole lot. And what about your role at Bering McKinley as CTO? And obviously you've been hitting the conference circuit. What's your direct role there?
Yeah, so my role now is, I kind of take it upon myself to be the knower of all the tools in the industry. So I try out a lot. I talk to a lot of people. I'm trying to build partnerships with the vendors to help enhance that Bering McKinley ecosystem. Get some discounts. But then helping the clients with their RMMs specifically, or the rest of their tool stack, and making sure that they're integrating and they're getting the most value out of their tools. Kind of finding some of this waste that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's whatchamacallit. That's that's always the hard part. I remember when I was an MSP. Yeah, thanks, Tim. We're gonna get the audio corrected in a minute. But whatchamacallit, yeah, so as an MSP, I had tons of tools and I was always looking at the shiny new thing, right? That's the running meme in the MSP space. It's switch RMM, fire your client, switch RMMs Wednesdays, it's change your PSA Tuesdays. It's it always feels like there's something new, but not enough people actually leverage their stack to get maximum efficiency, maximum squeeze out of it.
Yeah,
are you seeing a lot of that in the space?
Yeah, and it's overwhelming, right? Like you go to these conferences and it's vendor, pitch, and um and it's overwhelming. Do I need to make a change? Do I not need to make a change? You go on LinkedIn, your email is getting flooded, and um I feel like as an industry as a whole, and I'm going to overgeneralize, we could do better when implementing new tools into our stack and maintaining the stack that we have. I always like to say the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's a lot of work to change tools. So
But the new tool has so many toys and probably AI and whatever else. What do you and I know we'll get into this. We'll get into scoring your tools in the rest of your presentation. But I wanted to ask you real quick, like, what is the single biggest thing that you see like most common when it comes to like not using a certain feature or functionality of a tool? Is there any like theme that comes up over and over again?
I feel like tools not syncing into your PSA, either with the billing or the ticketing, I see that almost all the time. Specifically, I do a lot in the automate world. Everybody's managed to automate sync is broken.
Yeah. I mean, automate is just a remote like access tool, right? That's just how you access Screen Connect. So I'm not going to admit that I may have been one of those MSPs back in the day. At least for like the first 6 months of Automate, I was using it specifically for remote access. until we started building it out. So I completely get it. Um, all right. So you wanted to start off with a little exercise. You want to introduce what you wanted to do?
Yeah, sure. Simon, if you can go to slide 4. Okay, so real quick before we get started, just give you guys score yourself. How well do you think you're using your tools? Are you getting the most value out of them? Are you staying up with your upkeep? And when I talk about the tools, I mean the big ones when with us are our PSA or in the RMM, but really we're talking about everything: your Microsoft environment, your documentation tool, your QuickBooks, your HubSpot, all of that.
So what you see, I know you work on certain stacks,
Yep.
um, but the most common stack you work on, are you seeing a lot of it? Because I know back in my day, I was mostly in managing the full scam suite. HubSpot, not that it wasn't a thing, it just wasn't on my radar. It was like a separate thing. Of course, I had like, MailChimp for email campaigns and stuff like that. Are you seeing tool sprawl more prevalent today versus when it first started, when you first got into the business?
Um, I don't. I think people are using more tools now than when I first got into the business, and I think our behavior when it comes to the uh, upkeep of them, it hasn't really changed or improved much. One could make the argument that like the Microsoft, we're paying more attention to our Microsoft because we all got burned with the security stuff and all that on the insurance wise. But really, the whole point of this talk is to take those great habits that we're developing on our Microsoft environment and implement those to the rest of our tools.
Yeah, I get that. So, okay, so I'll give you the floor. What do you want to talk about next?
Okay, so um, go to the next slide, please. All right. So here, what we're kind of the order of events. I want to talk about the problem I see when we're working with MSPs where we all struggle, and then we'll break this down. And we're going to start with the journey of a tool, and we're going to go from the buying process to the onboarding process to the recurring maintenance. So
Okay, so you
essentially,
actually have a process for like doing this stuff, not, oh, that's pretty, sign up for trial and then tell somebody to implement it at some point, or worse, pay for it for 6 months and then
yeah.
maybe implement it later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's all what it comes down to, right? So at Bering McKinley, our main charge is we want to help clients level up. We want to help clients be more profitable. So when we're looking at our AGP or agreement gross profits or our net profit, it's that old Arrested Development line. There's always money in the banana stand. There's always things we can do in our tools to move that number.
For sure. Yeah, and Brian McConnell is agreeing there in the chat saying, it never happens. Never. All right, so let's talk about the problem. What is the problem? What is, you know, besides I want all these features, but tools should address a certain need, right? Not just because of the pretty features.
Yeah, I think we're signing up for tools. We don't have a real good plan, and part of this starts with just getting off on the getting off on the wrong foot. So having an undisciplined onboarding. Yeah, I'm going to start paying for this tool. I don't have time to implement it, or that old saying: the CEO bought a tool, didn't tell the techs about it. The techs don't know how they want to use it, what the plan is. We get reactive in our maintenance, using that automate to manage environment scenario. Oh, somebody mentioned a ticket, and then I went into automate and realized I haven't had ticket syncing for 6 months, or we missed 6 months of billing. At the end of the day, these things are hurting our bottom line. And, and in addition to that, some of these things that we should be paying attention to are raising our security.
So that increasing security risk, looking at new tools and how they actually increase security risk, that's a conversation I've seen over the last 6 or 8 months. And obviously, that's not a new concern. That's something that's always been in place. But I think people are more judgmental or more they have higher scrutiny for tools that add a new agent or to a client's platform or ingest data and how they're handling that data. And I'm not even talking GDPR. I'm talking like in North America, but in North America, the same thing. It's I see a lot more MSPs talking about the increased security risk of adding anything to their stack.
Mhm.
Is that a common thread with the MSPs you're helping?
Yeah, and I'm going to use the example. I've got some very respected friends in the industry that are incredible and my go-to people when I have security questions. But you go into their manage and everybody's an admin, or everybody's got the ability to export their data, and they didn't realize that. Or in their automate, everybody can build a script, which means everybody's got access to run SQL queries. And all it takes is one person to have a bad day and have the rights that they shouldn't have, and you're in trouble.
That was one of the biggest things when I first loaded Automate. I mean, I want to say for a good 3 years, everybody had admin access. Like the permissions inside Automate. Now, to be fair, it was 5 or 10, technicians at the time. It wasn't a huge amount, but still, everybody had admin access, and everybody could, like you said, they could go screw up the database if they wanted to. They absolutely had the ability to.
Yeah, and then like automate, you've got to put in those passwords for the agent if you need to, and everybody could see and read those passwords. There's
Mhm.
just certain thought processes you want to think about with your tool, and it's not, you know, always at the front end of your mind.
So when the MSPs work with you now, I know ideally they would be going to you first and saying, "We have this need," or by you I mean BMK, whatever, whoever they're working with. I have a need. I want to solve this problem, as opposed to I bought this tool to solve problems. Help me. How many are you seeing? What percentage of MSPs are you seeing are doing the former? Now being proactive about having a conversation with you first to determine solution need before purchasing something.
Sure. So I think a lot of it depends on where they are in their journey. A good portion of our clients we're working with right at the beginning. So it's their first foray into the ConnectWise Manager Automate. So we get to help build those practices right away and talk about those habits. If it's a client that didn't do their implementation with us and they're coming to us because, hey, we're drowning, we're overwhelmed, we need help getting back on track. That's where we will run our assessment, point out the risks and recommendations that we have, and use that as our hit list for further consulting. And then at the end, on the high level, if it's just, hey, we're really in tune to our numbers, we want to make it to the this next benchmark. Where can we tweak? We'll analyze the tools. We'll analyze our management costs for the tools, and try to find some safe deficiencies.
So you go over things. Give me some examples of the problem, right? And I know you go over this before you buy. You have some questions. Do you want to move on to the next slide so we can address them there, or you want to talk about the problems now?
Yeah, we can go on. Sure. Let's go on to slide 8. Okay, so a lot of the problem, and I have this with clients that I've been working with for years. Hey, we need to add this tool, and I'll say, hey, why? And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You're at the conference, you saw somebody, they gave out cool swag, they had a really cool booth, lots of people. You think you need the tool, but when we want to buy that tool, you got to pause yourself and let's ask ourselves 3 questions. Okay, so the first one is, what is the problem we're going to solve? What is the point of this? What is the point of this? And the example I like to give, the analogy I like to make, is we need a tool for remote access, or do we need a tool for monitoring? Like over the weekend, the kids wanted to go bowling. So we're looking at bowling alleys, and we got into a debate over bowling alleys because, well, this one's got arcade games and this one's got laser tag. And I was like, no, we want to go bowling. Who cares about that stuff? So let's stay focused on what problem it is that we're actually trying to solve, and not get caught up in the bells and whistles that all these tools. Once we've identified that problem, I really recommend talk to a couple of people. It doesn't have to be the first person you talk to, the first person to offer you the solution. Talk to 3 options, and then once you've honed in who that what the tool is that you want, ask them to talk to a couple of current partners. I mean, Ray, if you're talking to somebody who's thinking about OIT and they ask to talk to some current partners, would you have a problem putting them in touch with anybody?
So I handle it a little differently. I do ask. I ask the partners if they don't mind. That's why we get so many testimonials.
Okay.
But I personally am like ridiculously protective of my partners, privacy. So each and every time we get an ask for any kind of references or stuff like that, I will point them to the reviews. Now we focus a lot on making sure they get reviews, but I ask the partners every time and put it up to them, especially like when it's something like white label where nobody's supposed to know we exist in the relationship.
Sure.
Thankfully there's more than enough reviews that it makes it okay. Will, just real quick, because I see the comments from Tim and Tim. Do me a favor, just make sure, because you have a highly directional mic, just you do the same thing I'm doing. I do this all over the time. And I've adjusted my mic for it, but if you could just face the mic when you're talking,
Sure.
because these guys want to make sure they get every word you're saying. So
Is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. So when we're wanting to talk to the partners, really what you want to talk to the partners about is that onboarding process. And did they run into any pitfalls? What did they do? What challenges did they have? And so you can plan for those potential gotchas. So
Okay.
once we've identified that, the big thing is how the hell are we going to pay for this, right? Are we just going to pass this through as a cost to the company? Is this going to be a license cost to our clients where we're going to just charge by the license? Is this going to pay for itself in saved labor, or is this going to pay for itself by lowering our security risk? And it's important that we recognize this. So when we go into and we're evaluating our process and are we making money? Are we achieving what we want out of the tool? We've got numbers to look at. Like, yeah, we need to sell X amount of agents to get ROI. We need to save 5 hours a month for this to pay for itself. So now we can track that. Now we can be actionable and we've got some KPIs.
So, this process very fleshed out and I like it. I can't say I've ever actually looked at how are we going to pay for it beyond is it in our budget? But you're absolutely right. At some point it goes to where on the chart of accounts does this lie? Where is it? Is this a resold good? Is this something we're absorbing to provide better service to the client? Is it just a cost of doing business? So yeah, it absolutely makes sense doing that up front. This process though, I want to I want to qualify it. Are you doing this with every tool? Like when they say I want to do email phishing or security awareness training, CSAT, whatever. Are you doing this process with every tool they potentially bring on?
I would argue that you should. I mean, it doesn't need to be a 2 hour meeting, but you should know the answers to these questions. Like if you want to bring in phishing, for example, like email awareness. Okay, that's great. Is that going to just lump in with our current all-in pricing? Is it going to be an add-on? Are we going to change our all-in pricing? How are we going to communicate that to the clients? Things that we want, answers to questions we want to know before we sign on the dotted line, so we know what we're getting ourselves into.
Okay, and then when it comes how much time to implement, now I get you may be a little bit biased here as a company that helps with the tools. But a lot of these companies charge onboarding fees. A lot of these companies, I'll use Manage for example, or Manage Automate. They try to sell you the professional services for onboarding, and a lot of MSPs just don't want to pay anything for onboarding. We're technical; we can do it ourselves. I'm of the opinion that if you don't pay for professional onboarding, you're going to spend more time doing it, which is going to cost you more, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of getting the new tool to begin with. How important do you think it is having a professional go through onboarding with you in the implementation of that product?
Well, I think it's incredibly important. And when we talk about, because a lot of what we do is we work with ConnectWise to onboard new partners with Manage and Automate. And, at that point, they've signed up for the professional onboarding with us. But when we talk about how much time to implement, they know they get 12 hours with the consultant. But how much time do you need in between those calls? And how much time is it going to take you to do all those calls? Like we've got clients that want to do them all in a month, in 2 months. And we've got clients where it's a year and they've only used half of their hours. So we're really trying to budget the MSP's time so we can block out those resources to focus on the tool. Because the last thing you want to do is pay for the professional onboarding, go through the motions, not be ready when that onboarding is complete, and then be paying for the tool that you're not getting any ROI out of.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I can't, yeah, I mean, I've been in this spot where you get the tool, you're excited about the tool, you buy the tool, you run out of time to implement the tool, and then 6 months later, you're like, well, I haven't used this, I should cancel. Let me see when the contract renewal is. It's like, it's
Yeah.
a vicious cycle. You know what I mean? And I'd be lying if I didn't say we didn't have something today, at least one tool today that we haven't fully implemented because it kind of fell off the priority list with
Or
other
you
stuff.
buy the tool, you're really excited, and I got to work on this project, and you completely forget about it. And that's the kind of waste that we're talking about. And that, we at Bering McKinley are trying to preach to eliminate.
So, and I imagine having somebody like you go in and or your people go in and, when you get, for example, automated manage, I'll use it because they're the easiest example. Having somebody like, somebody from BMK come in and say, we're going to go through this process to get you on board and get you running up to speed, goes much, much, much faster than the alternative.
Yeah. So if you talk about a client let's say you call me tomorrow and you need help with your automate, you could tell me what your problems are, but honestly, like before we even address those, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do an assessment. I'm going to compare that to my best practices. I want to get your system up to best practices before we even start talking about those other problems, just to make sure that there's no gaps in the system. And so
Nice.
our engagements always start with an assessment and then bring you guys to best practices.
It's almost like what we tell MSPs to do when they get a new client, right? Do the assessment before you start changing stuff.
Yeah, I'm not going to work on your printer. We need to make sure that.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you 100%. All right, so we know the problem. We know how we're going to pay for it. We've determined if it's a cost of goods resold, if it's going to go into the stack, if it's an internal use thing. We know how much time to implement. Hopefully they're using, a well-known and respected firm like Bering McKinley to help implement much more quickly. So let's go through the onboarding process. What does that look like exactly?
Awesome. So the onboarding process, this is like the most important, and we were just kind of talking about it because you want to get off on the right foot with the tool.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's not easy because, I say it like with clients, right? And I think it was actually a ConnectWise thing I was speaking at. I was on a panel years and years ago. But somebody had mentioned you have the first 5 touches with a new client to cement their impression of you for the next 2 years. Well, tools are very similar. If their first interactions with the tools, the users, or, that could be your internal team or the end users, if their first interactions with the tools are going to be, this is frustrating, you're going to have an uphill battle. You're going to have an uphill battle getting them to adopt the tools. I'm with you. I think onboarding is the most important piece of any tool implementation.
So when we're talking about onboarding, I got just a couple big, stages that I like to, bring up onboarding any tool. The first is who's going to be your champion, who's going to be responsible for setting up and configuring the tool. But when you're identifying that, it is critical that you identify a backup, because you know what, your champion's going to go on vacation, your champion may get sick, or hopefully not, but your champion may leave for another job. I can't tell you how many clients I get just because somebody left and nobody knows what to do with the tool. So by identifying a champion and a backup, we're preventing that right from the start.
And you know what I'm going to ask. I mean, it's one thing to have subject matter expertise, but you know how I feel about documentation. Is part of the onboarding plan, when you're establishing these subject matter experts, documentation, in my opinion, is the best way to ensure ease of knowledge transfer when you have new people into the fold,
Yeah,
either from somebody leaving or from new hires, whatever. Do you cover that documentation during onboarding, or is that an after the fact thing?
Yeah, that's one of the outputs that you need during the onboarding is you need at least two key documents. Is the client onboarding document. So when I'm setting up a new client, what do I need to, what are the steps that I need to do so anybody can do that? But also a new user setup, which is maybe an end user, but your internal users, to make sure that all our users are getting it set up appropriately and consistently.
Absolutely. All right. So we got stage one, pick a champion and a backup. Cool.
All right.
What's stage two here?
So we want to block out the time on the calendar, and really what I'm preaching is treat this like you would treat a project with your customers, right? Set aside the time, designated time, so we can work with it, but also schedule your project check-ins, your cadences. And the reason we want to do that is because if we've got a goal that by June 1st we want to be live with this, and we ran into problems in the middle of April, we need to either adjust by adding more resources or adjust our go-to-market date from June 1st to July 1st. And this goes back to the trust but verify. I'm going to trust my champion and my backup to get this tool up and running, but I want to verify that they're still on track and we're going to hit our target date.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, it's a matter of everything has a next scheduled date until it's finished, right? If you don't schedule the time, it's not going to get done. Even poor Simon in the background, he's heard me say this 14 billion times. If you haven't created a block of time, if you haven't scheduled it, it's never going to happen. How many things you have on your list of like, I want to get to this next week when I have time, and that never actually happens. You never actually get there.
Right, and you need to have those blocked out times so your dispatcher knows, well, Simon can't work on tickets at this point. He's working on these tasks and manage. Otherwise, Simon's going to get flooded with tickets. So, this kind of this aligns with our ticketing and our calendars strategy at Bering McKinley as well.
So let me ask you a question though. I mean, you have this experience, you have this expertise. Simon knows zero about tech. Could you get him working tickets for me? Because I'd like to backfill my tech team a little bit. So, don't worry, Simon. I can see the panic already. All right, so we got the time blocked out. We picked our champion, our backup. What's next?
Okay, so we're having our check-ins to make sure the tool is getting set up and implemented. While we're doing that, we want to come up with our go-to-market strategy. How are we going to sell this? What kind of sales documentations, marketing meals do we need? We want to have all that ready. So on June 1st, when the tool is ready, we can hit go and start bringing in that revenue right away.
Revenue is important. I like revenue. I've always done that.
And this all goes back to trying to eliminate the waste, right? If we wait till the tool's ready and then we need another 60 days to come up with that go-to-market strategy, now we're paying for that tool probably at this point full price for 60 days and not getting anything out of it.
Right, because most of the bigger tools are going to give you some kind of ramp-up period too. It's just leverage that, right? Like, especially like when you get that credit card with no interest, use that to the best of your ability, like, intelligently, but, make use of that. If you have a 90-day ramp up where they're not billing you for it, I do my damnedest to make sure we're onboarded on that tool before we're at full board billing, right? It's just,
yeah, exactly. And so that 90 days needs to be 90 days till go to market. So if that means in 75 days, that tool needs to be fully implemented. So we've got 15 days to sell. You got to work backwards from go to market, not work backwards from when the tool is going to be ready.
I agree 100%. That's the constant battle I used to get in with sales previously, because I'm a network engineer at heart. That's what I did for, I'm not going to say how many years because I don't want to say how old I am, but but that's the thing. Like, salespeople would tell me all the time, and marketing people and devs would tell me all the time, well, you can't plan for, like, mistakes come up all the time, bugs come up all the time, or what ifs come up all the time. And my thing as an engineer, you build that buffer. You work back from the absolute final date you need to have it up and running, and you build buffer from there, and you have testing from there, and you just work backwards, and that tells you the true timeline. If you're just making up time, you're like, I'd like to have this done in 60 days. You're just in a world of hurt if you haven't planned that way. But it amazes me, like, how many, like, that engineering mindset of working backwards from the target and accounting for what ifs, like, that applies to, universally, right? That's not a
Yeah,
tech thing.
and they wouldn't do that with the client project, right? Like if you're doing a domain migration, you
Exactly.
wouldn't just, oh, we'll wing it, it'll be done when it's done. But you would think it out, you would map it out with your target dates and your buffers, and it's the same process. Like,
I mean, I look, I'll admit, I've done every bad thing you could possibly do as an MSP at some point during my career. So yes, we've done email migrations where like, Skykick or BitTitan will take care of it, no problem. And then like, what the hell was wrong with me? Why did I? Now that was very early in my career, and I was able to use my mistakes to teach, the rest of my staff, so they can make their own new mistakes. But it's all, and that's kind of the point of the experience, right? You want somebody like and I know this is not a pitch for BMK. I'm just saying, like, but BMK, I'm a big fan of advisors. I'm a big fan of like getting subject matter experts to come in, put you under their wing, and make sure you get off on the right foot. That's why I'm so passionate about. I may be more passionate about BMK than you are about BMK. So
we'll send you a shirt, right? But really, like, none of this stuff that we're talking about here, like if you guys are doing this right, you don't have to call me, at least for the first phase. This method is not dependent on you need a consultant. This method it's the equivalent of going to a dietitian and them saying, hey, you need to exercise more. We all know we need to do it. We just need to be better at it. And if I preach this well, then you guys should not need to call me right away. And so I'm losing money.
Well, you're teaching them, right? You're teaching
Right.
them to make use of this so they can have more meaningful impact with you. It's no different than onboarding with an MSP onboarding a client. I mean, that first month or 2 month, that first onboarding, you're doing a lot of hand holding. You're basically biffles, right? For that onboarding period, everybody knows what each other had for breakfast and dinner, and they probably saw each other waking up and going to bed that week, whatever it is, because there's a lot of getting accustomed to the process. But once you do, the next the subsequent months are much easier. I imagine this onboarding plan, as you spend time, the MSPs kind of learn to do a lot of this themselves. So when they do engage you or the other professionals at BMK, it's for more meaningful stuff because they've already gotten really good at this.
Yeah, we want to be working on the high level stuff. And it doesn't have to be this onboarding plan. Obviously, we recommend this one, but at the end of the day, just have some sort of plan. Plan is better than no plan.
And let me ask you, so Simon keeps bringing up the link, and you can download this presentation. So if you want to see this and go at your own pace, it's there. But Simon is putting up, you guys are gracious enough to include a free tools assessment for anybody watching this webinar now or in the future on YouTube or whatever. That brings a good point, right? New MSP comes to you and says, okay, we have our stack, but we didn't do this. Would you still recommend, like, just much more quickly, but going through these steps to make sure you have a solid understanding of your tool set?
Yeah, that's all part of our assessment and best practice project. So yeah, this website, and we'll talk about it more later, but if you go there, go to their landing page, you get a free either a PSA or an RMM assessment. We'll take a look at it. We'll give you our recommendations, which would be the same as if you signed up for us. We're not going to remediate it, but we'll show you what we find, and we can have a conversation around that.
So what's worse than tools I am using that I didn't onboard properly? And I apologize for the banging. That was me. I thought I was muted. I was taking stuff out of my thing. The one time I'm not muted, right? So what's worse than going to than doing this with tools you are using and you maybe didn't go through all these stages, so you don't know where you stand, is what about the tools I'm not using at all, right? Like those inactive tools. What's your stance on that?
Well, yeah, and then when we talk about, and we're going to get into this on the next slides, like we want to identify those inactive tools. So when we're talking about the maintenance post onboarding, what do we need to be doing with these tools? The conversations we need to be having about our tools, so we can identify, hopefully on the front end, when we need to replace a tool or when we can just flat out get rid of a tool. So when we're talking about tool maintenance, we've got two buckets. Next, please. And when we talk about these buckets, the big thing is we want to trust but verify. And I like to say we want to pick somebody to trust and pick somebody to verify that it's being done right. So if we're talking about our RMM, Who are we trusting to maintain it? What are our key KPIs? And who's going to be responsible for maintaining or for double checking that those KPIs are being done? Now, we can verify that by looking at a report, by some sort of monitor, by checking to make sure a ticket was closed. But we want to have somebody assigned to be the truster and somebody assigned to be the verifying. So the two buckets, next, please. Sign in.
There we go.
So the one is going to be our security and our technical audit. So when we're looking at this, the first thing we want to look at is who's got access to the tool, what kind of permissions do they have? Really what we're trying to identify, did somebody create a test account, give it full admin rights, forget to remove it? Did we make a temporary API key? Do we still need it? Can we clean that up? Our agent cleanup, did we, you talking about our RMMs, have we removed all of our old agents? Did we replace the machine and forget to retire it? This is all resulting in potentially paying for licenses that we don't need or preventing us from having to buy more licenses. Our tool patching.
That's what I was asking about, like, you know, if we do this with like the existing tool set too, because we do audits regularly. I like to think we have a good change management process, including testing new tools and decommissioning tools that we decide not to go with or when we're done using them. And we still always find stuff, right? That's not, you know, and for those that didn't see the previous Partner First, we did a Partner First with Saslio to discover some of that shadow IT. So I recommend you go back and find that on the MSP Media Network site. But yeah, I mean, there's always a little bit of cruft left behind. And I love this because it accounts for that. And, you know, the last thing I want is a breach notification 6 years from now that some account I forgot to close, you know, got breached and they have my plain text password that, of course, I use the same password over and over again. I'm kidding, but, you know, it happens, right? It does happen.
Yeah, and if you're unsure about what to do, how to do this for a tool, talk to your vendors. Like, Ray, if I called you guys and said, hey, what are the monthly things that my champion needs to be looking at? What are the 5 things that he should be monitoring? You guys would have no problem looking at that and helping come up with a checklist.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings a good point too, right? Like the vendors should be, I mean, how many vendors talk about partner enablement? When you go through vendor selection, how many vendors are prepared to tell you that? Like off the bat, you need to be watching these 5 things once you get started. I would argue the better vendors probably have that ready to go the minute you ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple other things that we want to be pointing out or taking a peek at this point is the tool patching. Like, do we have our systems patched the latest version of Automate? If you log into your control, how many of your control agents are out of date? That kind of stuff, making sure we're current. License spot check, making sure that all our old clients are out of there. We're not paying money for those. And then any kind of tool specific KPIs. So like in our Microsoft environment, accounts without MFA, accounts without MFA, machines that aren't patching, that kind of stuff. Let's identify those KPIs and check on them every month. Make sure that we're taking advantage or we're taking action on those and not forgetting them.
Love it. Okay. So, and I know we got to kind of scoot a little quick because we're already at 1:45. I want to be respectful of people's times. But it's more than just technical, right? There's the financial aspect of this thing.
Yeah. So the finance and leadership, we call this finance and leadership checks and balances. So the license reconciliation, and this is, are we charging our clients for all the licenses we're paying for? And this is not as simple as just trusting your sync. We need to make sure that, you know, we're identifying it if our sync is broken or if we forgot to properly onboard and turn on the sync for a client.
That makes sense. Yeah.
We want to identify the cost to manage this tool. And if you've got a decent reporting tool in PSA, you should be able to identify, you know, how much money are you spending in labor to manage this tool? Is this, when we were making the tool selection decision, was this in line with what we expected? Is it over? Is it not? How are we going to account for that? Going back to how are we going to get ROI on our tool? Well, did we do it? Did we not? Are we on track? Are we not? And if not, what are we going to do that? Do we need to sell more licenses? Do we need to charge more? these are things that we need to be focused on month 1, month 6, month 20. It matters. And then just the overall effectiveness of the tool. So this goes back to what was the problem, right? If this tool is not solving the problem, if it's a documentation tool that's meant to give everybody real-time access to the documentation and they can't log in because of outages, well, we've got a problem. We need to, start looking at other options.
And that overall effectiveness, like you said, these are not metrics that you look at one and done after you're implemented and just move on with life. I imagine you're doing regular stack audits to make sure you still believe the same thing today. You're still happy today as you were last year. Is that a regular part of what you do with the MSPs?
Yeah, and depending on let's say the criticalness of the tool, it could be as frequently as monthly, or as quarterly, or even yearly. But we need to be checking on all of our tools at some sort of cadence.
So, Will, let me ask you. Okay, I'm a brass tacks kind of guy, right? Like, we have a mutual friend, Jason Slagle, which I gave him all types of gruff because I just realized your fridge. I have the exact same fridge in my office. I'm staring at it right now. But I give him all kinds of gruff because a year and a half ago, him and every other security researcher on the planet, their answer to every question was, "It depends." Yeah, we got to check and see and blah, blah, blah. And so I tasked him and Wes Spencer and John Hammond and tons of other security researchers. I said, give me actionable items I can take away. Stop making it depends, because you can't expect people to be protected and do the right thing if the answer for everything is it depends. If you can't say it easily, how the hell is somebody like me, like a layperson, going to understand it? So I'm going to talk to you. Let's go to brass tacks. MSP comes to you and says, Will, help me. You're my only hope. I've been MSPing for 5 years, but I'm not using my tools. I'm using full scam suite. What does that look like? What's like your first vector of attack? What are you doing with them?
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a business assessment and assess their business and just kind of their overall profits. And then we're going to assess their tools and identify, where they're lagging. And I like to take the house and the old show House. I like to use as an analogy. Patients always lie. It's
oh yeah.
An MSP could come to me and tell me the problem is X, but chances are the problem is really Y and Z. So we like to get in there, get our hands on it first, then make our recommendations, and then based off of that, we can come up with a plan to either swap tools, help them re-implement their current stack, or recommend some better tools and help them get those properly implemented.
Yeah, that talking about House reminds me of the tennis ball he would play with. It wasn't even a tennis ball; it looked like a tennis ball, but it has an official name: ball of unknown origin, because even the people on House have no idea where it came from, but it was a running thing throughout the entire show, and it actually changed sizes. It went from like tennis ball size to like size 3 soccer ball size. It's a whole thing. I love those little Easter eggs. Anyway, but okay, I mean, but that goes back to what you were saying, right? Like at the very beginning of your process, identify the problem. That makes very much sense. All right, so is there, when you're consulting on the tool sets, you're helping them with stack alignment, you're helping with these things, is there a specific tool set that BMK, I know you're agnostic, but like, is there a specific tool set you're very comfortable with, or does it matter?
Yeah, at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the fundamentals. I mean, we do a majority of work with the ConnectWise stack and then the tools around that, but we've got plenty of clients on the other tools as well.
And I will say, you're the first one I've ever heard talk, the first consulting company I've ever heard talk that mentions the security of the tools in the conversation. If I always say, like, my sales methodology is I love bringing up ideas that the client may not have thought of and creating a point of conversation around it so they can start thinking about those important things. That's what a subject matter expert should do, right? Bring awareness to the things you weren't thinking about. And I know every MSP is paranoid about security, as they should be today, right? We all should be paranoid about security at this point. But having the vendors you rely on and the coaches and that you rely on, having them be aware and focused on security too is a big deal. So I'm very glad to see that. And like Simon has the link up there for the free tool assessment from Bering McKinley. Will, thank you so much, dude. I appreciate you. Where are you going to be next?
So I will be out and about this summer. I'll be at MSP GeekCon, putzing around. I will be at IT Nation Secure, and then I'll be at the CompTIA thing in August. So come find me, come say hi. Please fill out this sign up for an assessment. We'll take a peek at your manage. We'll give you our thoughts. I'll do the same thing for the automate. Happy to help. This stuff is just, I want to help make the community better.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Will. And I'm glad to hear the 3 events you mentioned, or the next 3 events. I'll be at a few others, but I will be at those 3 events. So I'm glad we'll be able to hang out as well. Maybe we can set up like some coaching time or something, like a little, like I know they were doing this channel partners where they had a little like spend time with coaches kind of thing. Maybe we'll do a little open live stream Q&A from one of the events.
Sure.
I think it'd be kind of cool. All right, man. Well, Will's information is in the show notes below. It's on that card. Go hit them up they're offering a free assessment. Like, go hit them up. That's kind of a no-brainer. And Will's a good guy. He's not going to hammer you with sales and all that crap. That's not his style. But we have some really cool stuff coming up besides those events we talked about. Simon, what do we have coming up next, man?
Yeah, so we do have several events coming up. Tomorrow we are actually doing an MSP Dispatch special report live stream with Alex Farling of Lifecycle Insights and Dan Wensley of SkillPad. So this is going to be our mergers and acquisitions and owners insider perspective. So make sure you tune in on that. And that's going to be hosted by Ray, again at 1 p.m. Next Thursday, April 27th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be at the Tech Bar Podcast, episode 57, with Kyle Christensen of K7 Leadership. And we have a special surprise guest host for that episode. And then May 1st through May 5th in-person event, we're going to be at IT Nation Evolve in Dallas, Texas. So Alex from our team, she'll be there. Make sure you come by and say hi to the team.
I'm always muted at least once. And if that's not enough, I'm doing a webinar with Richardson and Richardson tomorrow, talking about increasing MRR for cybersecurity sales, I think. I don't know. It's on the link. But we're giving away cool stuff like this Stream Deck right here. So this is Simon's, but we're giving away a brand new one. So there you go. Yes, Danny, I was muted, blah, blah. But all right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Will. Thanks, everybody that's been spending time with us. I appreciate you guys. Will, thank you, dude. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you. Time went by way too fast. I can't wait till the next one.
Until next time. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ray.
Yeah, man. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, guys.